So we're going to get started now. So this is a continuation of the meeting that commenced yesterday, and to note a couple of apologies. So I've got Councillor McPherson as an apology and Councillor Wilson for lateness. I'll move those. Seconded by Councillor Tooman. All those in favour? Against? Carried.
I am against the apologies. Your Worship, do we have a moment to speak against those?
Oh, certainly. Okay, so let me just be a bit more formal about that. I've moved that the apologies be accepted, and Councillor Tooman has seconded that. Councillor, you wish to speak on that?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. Last night after the meeting yesterday, I went home and I reflected on the meeting that we had in the chamber, and upon reflection, I didn't feel very good about the things that I was left to ponder on. Some of the mischievous behaviour that happened in the chamber...
So, Councillor O'Leary, the question I've got for you is, if you are speaking to this, you are speaking on the motion, and you have signalled that you are speaking against it, so you need to speak to the topic. Okay, so this is about apologies.
All right.
Now, while I accept that you might have comments about other things...
I'll leave my notes to another time then.
Right, thank you.
Point of order. Mischievous behaviour, I find that upsetting. I think that this was democracy yesterday, and to put the word out there that was mischievous behaviour, I don't believe is accurate or correct.
That's my opinion.
So you are drawing to my attention an objection to some words. Are you, Councillor King?
That's correct.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to deal with that like this. I think for meeting process, we're going to have to be a lot more formal. So I am going to be referring more to the procedures and the standing orders. So what I would ask councillors to do are several things. When you stand to speak for or sit, I'm happy for you to sit. When you're speaking for or against a motion, can you please state that before you start to speak? It's clear where you sit on a position. Secondly, can you confine your speaking and debate to the issue at hand? If you stray into irrelevant matters, I will be requesting you to refocus yourself on the debate. Thirdly, if councillors are intending to make personal comments about colleagues or any other people for that matter, I will be asking you to stop that, and if it is sufficiently serious, I'll be asking you to apologise. What I would like you to do is to focus on the substance of the issue at hand and to state clearly what your position is on it and why, in an advocating way, and not to stray into irrelevant matters or personal language that, quite frankly, having observed the people sitting in the public gallery yesterday, I think they found it quite frustrating. People want to hear what we think about topics and why. And so do colleagues. Councillor King, I've answered your point of order, I guess, in that way, to refocus all councillors on the way they speak and what they speak about, and let's confine it to the topic at hand. And Councillor O'Leary, the reason that I asked you to speak to the motion, not to other things, is because, as I've said, we're going to focus entirely on how the standing orders work and debate the topics we're talking about and not other things. So I hope that answers your question.
Could we ask that the comment gets withdrawn, please?
Yes, I am going to ask Councillor O'Leary to withdraw that, but having said that, I'm not accepting that what she was speaking about was relevant, so I think we've dealt with it in that way. So we're now...
Could we ask for the words to be noted in the minutes, please?
Councillor King,
yes.
I'm chair of the meeting.
It's a point
And-
of order over. It's
And when I speak, you don't speak. So I'm speaking. I'm chair of the meeting, and I have now set the context and tone for the meeting today. And while I accept the point you have raised, and I've said, yes, I agree, Councillor O'Leary, is to withdraw that comment, I am dealing with it in this way, and that's my decision. And we're only, no, I'm not going to hear any more on it.
Point of order.
No, I'm not hearing any more on it. That's my decision. I'm hearing no more on it. I've set the context for the meeting within the first few minutes, right? And that's how we're going to proceed. I'm not hearing any more on it. That's my decision. So, councillors,
Can I ask for it to be noted on the minutes that I asked for the words to be recorded and that the Mayor has said she won't do that?
No, the minutes will reflect what has actually happened, and it will record, as it always does, that point that you raised. So they'll reflect accurately what's happened. So we're now going to...
Your Worship, I apologise, I'm not relitigating that. I was out of the room, but I just want to make sure that the apologies
We're going to vote on it.
have been sustained.
Yes, we're going to now vote.
Because if there's any debate, I'm happy to make a statement on behalf of Councillor McPherson and the reasons for his absence.
Well, what I've moved and seconded the apologies.
Yep.
And I'm now going to, unless anyone else wishes to speak to the matter of apologies, I'm now going to put that. Can we do that? Let's do it on a show of hands. All those in favour? Those against? Thank you. Okay, we're now going to move to where we left off yesterday, which is on page...
I ask that that be recorded, and I'll approach those councillors in the interim and explain to them the reasons for an apology from one member, which if they had any humanity they should be well aware of.
Excuse me, Councillor Gallagher, but voting is always recorded.
Thank you.
As you well know.
Thank you.
So let us move on to what we're actually here
You're not
for.
accepting an apology
Thank
for a
you.
member who's... I won't say any
Councillor
more.
Can
I'm
you
happy to
stop
explain.
speaking, please, because we're moving on.
What humanity
All
in
right,
this place?
so we are now on page 13.
Excuse me. Should we be talking about Dave's email and the serious implications that go with it from last night that were shared with all councillors about him not being able to be here today? Should that, I mean, that's a serious matter that he's asked the Chief Executive. Did you see his email?
So, Councillor King, the meeting has been convened. It does comply with the standing orders. There is a quorum, and we are proceeding with the meeting. Matters in relation to Councillor McPherson's complaint about that process has a process which it'll lock into and be dealt with in due course in that process. Okay? So that's how we're dealing. We're here in a meeting. It does comply with standing orders. We do have a quorum, and we are now going to proceed with the meeting. Okay.
What about the overhanging implications of this 10-year plan process from today on not being ruled as not being in proper order because of Dave's complaint?
But Councillor King, as I've said to you, the meeting has been convened in compliance with standing orders. There is a quorum present today, and we are going to proceed with the meeting. Councillor McPherson may take a different view, but the advice given to this council is that this meeting is properly convened, and we will proceed on that basis.
What if the auditor takes a different view?
The Auditor General,
The auditor who he's written to,
the Auditor General,
who
I think it's who he's
he
written
addressed his email to,
well,
yes.
there'll be a process that will go through, and that will materialise out with an answer in due course. But the advice given by council staff, by the Chief Executive, by the legal advisors, this meeting is properly convened. There is a quorum, and we will proceed.
It would have been nice to have that advice circulated, because the email was addressed, was sent to all members, and we've walked in here with no information on to that.
Sorry, Your Worship, a point of order.
No, I'm not going to listen. I need to respond to this.
Because
Well,
I mean,
with
you
respect,
obviously had that
Councillor-
information, but we didn't.
No, well,
We
with
don't
respect,
debate by email.
yes, thank you. With respect, Councillor King, I arrived this morning to prepare for the meeting, and as all good chairs would do, you just clarify, are we good to go with our procedure and process? Because that's just usual business for chairs. And in the course of that, I confirmed that we were all okay to go. So there's nothing new in that. It's called good practice in meetings, and that's what I've done.
Thank you
So
for
that
sharing
has a
that with us.
process to go through, and we'll let it go through that. Yes, Councillor Mallett.
Thank you, Worship. I presume then we're just working off the advice given to us from Democracy Manager last night that this is the reconvening of yesterday's meeting, and that's the strength of what we're. And I'm not haven't got a dog in this fight, but I'm just trying to be clear that this is the second day of yesterday's meeting. Yep.
Correct. Right. All right, we're on page 13. Pensioner housing was where we were up to. We just finished cycling. Blair, do you have any additional comments to make on that?
Thank you, Worship. Just very brief comments. We have received a petition. The petition does not comply with our citizens-initiated referenda, so that therefore we have taken that no further. Council will note that a decision was made in November last year under a special consultative process. Pensioner housing was not part of this consultation document.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so nothing is required there from your perspective?
No.
Right, okay.
Worship.
So I'm getting to you, Councillor Geller, don't worry.
Apologies.
I'm just
Cool.
checking with the General Manager that he's finished what he wanted to say. Okay, so I'll take some questions to the General Manager. Councillor
Yeah,
Geller.
I'm seeking some procedural guidance initially from you. First of all, I just ask the General Manager, if the Council, and I'll have to then receive guidance from the Chair of the meeting if this is possible procedurally, given that Council, in terms of its approval of fees and charges, approved a rent increase for our current tenants, and I take that on the chin. I didn't realise it, but that's what happened, and I'm responsible for that, along with other colleagues, obviously.
So what's your question?
The question is, what would be the impact if this council chose to freeze rents at the current level until such time as there was a sale, or until the 2016-17 review of fees and charges?
All right, so while, General Manager, that's not a question that's on point with this topic.
All right.
Because it relates to fees and charges, and we have a section, as I said yesterday, as part of the process of this meeting, that at the end we'll pick up any other matters. Could I ask Councillor Gallagher that you hold that to then? Okay,
Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? Councillor Yong?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to ask, since 27th of November, Council made the decision of selling the pensioner housing. Now it's already early June. I just wonder, could we have an update and what's the intake or uptake of the social service housing providers? Any information? Or?
Yes, thank you. Yes. So from the 23rd of February, for a period of 6 months, we've commenced a request for expressions of interest process. To date, we've had 23 organisations register an interest in participating in that process. That means that they've received comprehensive information packs on the pensioner housing complexes. And in the month of mainly May, we conducted a series of site tours of the particular housing complexes. They were guided tours with advance notice to the tenants. Many of those parties participated in those. The advice from staff is that there are a number of quite serious bidders as part of those groups, but at this stage we have not received any bids, nor did we expect to. That process runs through to the 23rd of August. So at this stage they're in a information gathering inspection phase, and we're halfway through the process.
Right, thank
Just
you.
one more question,
Yes.
because we don't know exactly what's the outcome by end of August. What if some of the pensioner housing remaining within council, but it's not in the 10-year plan? So would that have any implications?
So the 10-year plan has assumed that council remains, in terms of the budget, that councils' budgets are as if we run the business of pensioner housing, because councils will recall the resolution which says that we obviously bring back the outcome of the pensioner housing REO process to council. That would be towards the end of this current year. And there is a resolution that says any properties that remain unsold at the end of that process will be reported back to council for further direction. So to be conservative, the budget for pensioner housing, income and expenditure and renewals remains in the 10-year plan until those decisions are made by council. So,
Still within.
so in other words, council may, as a result of that process, choose to sell all or some or none of the properties. Our 10-year plan budget reflects the fact that we continue to run the properties as if we run them now, noting that the substantive decision has been made to exit the service, but of course, being conservative, we needed to leave the budget in there for how we operate them in the meantime.
Okay.
Okay,
I
thank
think I
you.
have, yeah.
All right, so nothing further is required in respect of this item?
No, there's no,
Okay.
from staff, no further action required.
Right, okay, thank you. So we're now moving on then to the public source of non-fluoridated water. So, Blair, are you talking to that one?
I can do, Your Worship, and I also have the General Manager Infrastructure, Chris Allen,
that's
available
fine.
to support.
Okay, thank you. Chris, are you talking to that? Is there anything you need to tell us, or is it, I mean, it's pretty clear
I
what
think
it
the
is.
information, Your Worship, is included in attachment 1.
Yes,
I would just note for Councillors' information, that information is consistent with information that was provided as part of the discussion on fluoride previously, where Council requested options on non-fluoridated water supply.
all right. Okay, are there any questions then to the General Manager on this item? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Your Worship. At the previous time we discussed an unfluoridated supply, the costs were given as about $300,000. The submitters are saying that, I think it's Taranaki, put in a couple of outlets for about 30,000. Have you any other information that might suggest we could do this at a very reasonable price? I mean, what's the difference between, is it Taranaki and us, or Palmerston North and us? What's the fundamental differences?
So the fundamental difference is how those towns get their water. So in a lot of cases, they are able to tap into quite pure artesian wells through bores. We don't have that luxury in Hamilton. So we've looked at the submissions, and particularly one submission which identified quite a few towns which have non-fluoridated tap water. Interestingly enough, about 6 of those examples are in towns which don't fluoridate water anyway. So I think they're taps that they provide for drinking water, but the non-fluoridated supply. The two that are fluoridated, Hastings is probably the best example. But once again, they've popped a pipe down an existing borehole and managed to tap into a very secure artesian and well and provide the fluoride that way. So that's the basic difference.
So we, effectively, we don't have
Look,
a
our
system that could do that here.
Yeah, if we were to, be our view, that'd be very costly to put down a bore, and we probably couldn't find a secure supply. So our aquifers would be quite shallow, probably not the drinking water standards.
When you talk about a secure supply, is that to the individual who's turning on the tap, or is it about protection of the water source from contamination?
Sorry, my understanding it's a secure aquifer, so the aquifer is quite pure, secure from contaminants and etc.
And we have none of those in Hamilton.
It's our view that we don't. It'd be very difficult to and costly to explore and find one, but it's our view that we don't. We wouldn't find that.
And the cost of $300,000 that was quoted to us previously is to put a line from the water treatment station out to the gate, effectively. That was the cost.
Correct, and the difficulties were in our plant and the way our plant's configured, and just how you would tap in the pipe to get that supply. On top of the I guess the issues of just access to that supply outside. So
Okay,
the $15,000 option that was presented to council last time was really on the basis of an internal supply in terms of a water cooler type thing. So using a reverse osmosis technology to remove fluoride from the fluoridated water supply. So it's very much an inside solution. If you go to Hastings, they've provided an outside solution. So I think they've recognised that vehicular access to the fluoridated supply has been raised as quite important, where people can turn up and with their 20-litre containers and fill up the litre containers, put it in the car and go. So if we were to replicate that, it would be the same technology as our inside cooler, but would be at higher cost if council wanted to replicate the Hastings option.
All right, Councillor Young?
And yeah, in your paper on the page 14, option 2 there, that's the ionizing technology. Is that the similar one you've been talking about? Internally, like a filter kind of thing. What you need is the water supply and electricity that can able to run this water station with filtering the fluoride.
Correct, essentially,
Right.
yes.
So that the cost will be about $10,000 to $15,000 to set up one.
Correct.
And then the ongoing operating cost is roughly about $3,000 a year for
Correct.
one.
Okay, Councillor Pesco?
Yeah, just a question in terms of that option 2 and the fact that it only releases about a litre per minute. I just envisage that there could be long queues of people turning up with 10 and 20 litre plastic containers to these sites and having to wait 10 minutes perhaps to fill up a 10 litre container. If the explanation that you've given us is that we need sites where cars can actually stop so that they can put the water in. Has that been the experience of the other local authorities who have got this particular plant installed?
So if I may, can I ask Andrew to talk to that? Because Andrew's been talking to Hastings in
Right,
particular.
okay, thank you, Andrew.
In the Hastings example, the flow rate is about 2 litres per minute. So I can't speak on detail on all the other examples, but the flow rate is about the same rate as what's in the report. And
it talks about 1 litre per minute, I think.
Yes, so they're all in the same sort of ballpark. There's things we could do to improve that if we were to proceed with this option, but they all are about that rate. And so hence, in the Hastings case, their advice is vehicle access is desirable, so that you could leave a larger container in the vehicle while it just takes the time to fill up. Yeah. But my understanding is most of the installations around New Zealand have a flow rate that's in the 1 or 2 litre per minute rate.
Right.
So do they experience queues of people who will turn up at 9 o'clock, that there'll be 10 or 20 people, and they'll wait up to an hour to fill up their containers, or is that not the experience?
I did not ask that specific question, but it was not raised as an issue when I asked about issues experienced.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this matter? No?
I just want to put in a motion.
A motion, okay. Yep. Councillor Young, what's the motion?
The motion is to 2 non-fluoridated water stations using the ionizing technologies to be established with the budget of $35,000 in year 1, that's 2015 to 16, and $6,000 per annum from year 2 to 10. That's
Okay,
roughly
so
the...
could we put that up on the screen so we can see that? So just while that's happening, who can talk about financial implications? I mean, it seems a small amount. I doubt that it will.
And the figure I put in the motion is just roughly calculated based on option 2. But I think the staff need to verify the amount.
Yeah, so if you have 2 installed, is
Yeah,
the
2.
operating costs double, or are there economies of scale through 2?
I would say it would be doubled, would be the right way to look at the finances.
So
Is there
roughly,
likely to be a seconder for this, for Councillor Young's motion? There is? Okay. Councillor Forsyth's likely to be the seconder.
While that's going up, could I just ask another question that revolves around this? Would we if we did locate these particular plants in places where motor cars would be able to access them, do we need also to make provision for parking as well as having a road management plan if we have got, you know, frequent numbers of cars lining up to use these devices?
Yeah, if I could sort of just talk to that. So just to be very clear, what you're looking at in option 2 is a water cooler type facility inside a building. So we would have to find a building to put that, let's say the central library or something like that. I'm not sure that we've ever tested that would meet the needs of the people wanting this facility. I think our research just in the last couple of days and talking to Hastings indicates that an external supply with vehicle access might meet the needs of the people a bit more. So we think for one of those facilities, the cost that deals with you know, vehicle access, etc., would be approximately $60,000 per station. So my suggestion would be if council wanted to make a resolution along that lines to it, $35,000, it might be best to provide a budget to go away and work with the group that wants that facility and work out what's better, the 2 inside ones or 1 external one. Right. The budget's probably more likely to be $60,000 for 1 external. But I think if council did want to do something, it would be really prudent, I think, to engage with the other potential users of the facility to make sure we provided something that was useful.
Right, okay. So having heard that, Councillor Young, just give some thought perhaps to your resolution.
Yeah.
Councillor Mott, did you have a question on this?
Yeah, just a question and a comment.
Well, no, it's a question.
Yeah, good on you. Yeah, righto. I think people have got a vision of people going out there with their 2-litre plastic bottles and filling them up.
Question is?
Yeah, just listen for it.
Well,
have you contemplated, Philip, that people might go out there with tankers and sit there and fill that up, because it's not practical to go out every morning with my 3-litre water bottle and then go back home and feed the kids. Somewhere along the line, people are going to say, "Bugger it! I'll do it once a week, and I'll get a little mini tanker thing and fill up." Now,
Councillor Miller,
just let me finish, please.
No, No, listen to me. This is a time for questions. What you're straying into...
I'm asking you a question. I said,
well,
are you contemplating this?
Yes.
And then
so
Chris can answer the question.
You asked that question, then you went on and on and on. So your question is, had you contemplated people turning up with tankers to fill up instead of a bottle? There we go. I've asked your question in 1 sentence. That's what I'm asking councillors to do, to focus on particular topics and ask your questions rather than a long-winded explanation. And it's a good question. So, General Manager, could you answer that question? Because I think what we're now hearing is that after making inquiry, there's some concerns here about volume and how you might get volume if it's not just a water bottle.
Yeah, I think our recent inquiry...
And because this is my question, would you put limitations on people? So would you say you can go out there and fill up to such and such, and at some stage would we have to start charging for the water? Because you're going to get not just mum and dad with the plastic bottle, you're going to get commercial operators, you know, people who want to have a tap at their pub that's fluoride-free water and all sorts of things.
Yeah, some interesting questions. I think our expectation is that you're more likely to get the people turning up with a 20-litre container, that size container. We haven't heard anything about commercial operators wanting to provide fluoride free. We'd have to check whether that would be the case and whether you put limitations on it. I do know in the Palmerston North one they do have limitations on the hours of operation of the fluoride-free tap, but I'm not sure what's driving the limitations. We'd have to check that. I think at 2 litres per minute, it might not be an economical proposition for a commercial operator to come and fill up his mini tanker. I'm not sure.
Or then you get the queuing situation that Rob alluded to, don't you? You get people waiting for ages.
So there's some good questions in there, because what you're saying is a lot of this you're not sure about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I mean, it just makes that budget become a bit unrealistic.
So, Councillor Young, I did ask you, sort of while we were discussing this, just to have a reflection on that. Do you have another question, Councillor Gallagher?
My thing is around process, because I just want to check, and your guidance, is that all we're doing today is debating whether or not there's a quantum allocated for this possibility. It seems to me that obviously the detail, questions in detail is for another meeting. I just want to confirm process. This is purely about whether we make an allocation in the budget for this proposal, subject to a proper proposal. You know.
Well, I think, Councillor Gallagher, that's in your hands. Councillor Young has put forward a motion that he's going to be quite specific, but I've just said to him, in light of the further information, does he want to rethink that? So I guess as a council, we can resolve pretty much anything.
Yeah.
So I think that answers your question, really. I mean, what are we debating today? We are responding to a submission that asks for a water source for public access for non-fluoridated water. Councillors can determine how they might want to meet that request, and that could be in a variety of forms, or they could choose not to meet that request. And Councillor Young is having a bit of a chat behind you as to...
My assumption is, for example, if I voted for this, what I'm actually voting on is, and Chief Executive, help me, is a quantum of money. Obviously, there would be a report that would come back that would actually give a final detail within that budget as to how this would work, and at that point, Council would confirm or otherwise its budget decision. Is that a correct?
No, I think that the Mayor's challenge to Councillor Young is to actually clarify that. I think at the moment it is saying that we will put into non-fluoridated water units at the moment, and
as against an allocation.
As against an allocation is the way I read it.
Yes, and I'm now going to go to Councillor Young. In light of what you've heard, do you want to make any changes?
I just want to have one question for the General Manager. You mentioned about the stations, the indoor, outdoor. For example, if I just say for the bus terminal or Clotton Event Centre, to put one of those each over there, would that make the difference on the costing of setting up the station?
No, if you wanted to put the internal one in, the cost that we've got in the report per unit would be appropriate. So whether you put it in the transport centre or Claudelands, part of that cost would be to find a water source and find a drain source and plumb those in and buy the technology and put it in place. So in rough terms, it's the same cost.
But those infrastructure already exist.
Yeah, it's just be tapping into it. The costs anticipate that there is services nearby that we can tap into to make one of these stations. And
okay,
if I can just be clear,
yes.
Your Worship, the external option and just the costings on that, our view on a budget provision to go away and investigate would be $60,000 plus an ongoing cost of $5,000 per year.
Right.
So just to complete the...
So as I'm understanding what you're saying, Chris, is that if the majority of councillors wanted to provide an unfluoridated water public source, it might be better to have an allocated budget amount for you to then go away and work with that group about how we might deliver that, and then come back with a report to explain this is how we're going to do it. Is that your advice?
Correct. That would be the best way to make sure we provided something that was useful to the people who want it.
Right, okay.
So if I make the some changes on the motion, that 1 or 2 non-fluoridated water stations using the ionizing technology be established with a budget of up to $50,000 in 2015-16, year 1, and 6,000, per annum for year 2 and 10. So it's pretty much changing the budget up to. Yep.
So I'm just going to ask the General Manager before I go to Councillor Mallett. So is that clear to you?
That's better.
It is predetermining an internal technology, if that's what's intended. If you wanted the more flexibility, a a resolution around providing a budget provision of 60,000 plus 5,000 ongoing and report back to council after engagement with the potential users would be.
Would be better.
I'm happy with
All
that.
right, so why don't you pick that up? So I think, let's just get that clear, and then Councillor Mount, you've got a question.
Well, I think what's happening now might answer my question.
I think so, yeah.
I was just going to ask, I thought the flavour of the debate was we're going to go back and do some more research. Then Philip said, no, let's just spend another 50, increase the amount of money and get the two anti-fluoride.
Yes, I think your question's being answered now by changing the motion. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, look, I just had a question to Chris, just to understand.
Sorry, point of order. Sorry, it hasn't answered my question because it's gone off the screen anyway.
Right, so let them just get it typed up.
Just writing it up now.
Yeah, okay.
Let's just get it typed up before we launch into any more questions, eh? Shall we just do that?
Just, Philip, is your intention to have, I thought Chris raised some concerns and said, no, well, we'll do some research and come back, or are you preempting that research and saying, no, instead of paying 35 for these two things, we'll increase the budget to 50?
Well, I think again, Councillor Mallett, they're just working out what the acceptable wording would be to enable the General Manager to do what Councillor Young would like the Council to do. So let's just get the wording right, and that might actually take care of everyone's questions.
You need to work out something first.
No.
Quite eerie, isn't it? Who's going to speak first?
Sounds of silence.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
All golden.
Oh, golden, golden,
yeah.
golden. Oh, okay.
Right, have we got it up? There's no solution to it, Brian. Blair is in the spotlight.
You're in the light.
It's in the spotlight, and that's that's where it is.
Whoever arranges that big banner just needs to move a little bit that way.
Right.
You could be the song and dance man.
Yeah. Oh, my moment in the spotlight.
Well, have you ever had them with... Yeah, well, they're just Junos. It's always a Juno. You probably...
So, Councillor Young, does that reflect what you would like?
Yeah.
Like, yes, that's okay?
Yep.
Councillor Forsyth, is that okay with you?
You happy with that?
Yes? Right. So, are there any other questions on this matter? And then we go, yes, Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, Your Worship, I just need to get clear. If this was inside a building shed facility, I presume that means restricted hours, and then you'd have the car parking issue as well. So the bus station might not be a good option. So I just wanted to understand inside. But what about if it was external? What would be the security measures that would be needed around it? And the third question is relating directly to the resolution, is that if the report comes back to council and shows that this is not viable for whatever reason, would council vote that down if that's how council felt at the time? So,
Well, I mean, your last question is, you know, the money or the bag question, isn't it? So we can't answer that one. And your first and second questions, can you just respond to that? It's a matter about security, but is that something you would take care of in your report back?
It's definitely something that we briefly talked about and would cover in the report. It might be the location is the important thing, and it might be best where there's CCTV camera or whatever. So it's something we'll definitely have to look at in the report, and engagement with the groups and talking to Hastings and other places where they put the facility in and learning from their experiences as well.
Okay, so if after exploring all that and you come back with a report and the council says, well, that's not palatable, well then CFO, that's a matter, that budget line then just comes out and goes on the risks and opportunities. Councillor Mallett, did you have any other questions?
Yeah, I just, the internal logic of that doesn't make sense to me. It presumes that we're going to build something for $60,000 and going to be spending $5,000 a year operating expense, and then says, and we'll see what staff report back to us. That's asked about kite, isn't it? Shouldn't staff come to us and say, this is our recommendation?
Councillor Mallett, just on that terminology, what did you say? Ask about face.
That means backwards.
Yeah, it's very common. It's been around for about 100 years.
Yeah.
Common vernacular.
So in the interests of the sensitivity that councillors around the table now have to language, perhaps you might want to rethink that phrase.
Head over tail. Is that okay with everyone? Hands up if you're offended. Okay. So what you've done is staff are going to report back, and if their report says it can't be done for less than $150,000, what does that do to the recommendation?
that's exactly my question before, and there was an answer for it.
We don't do it.
So then the council has to come back, the staff have to come back with a recommendation or a report that says it can be done for $60,000 and $5,000 per annum. Is that what this is saying?
Are you clear what that motion means?
Yes, we're just talking whether for the council we put for final approval, whether that gave some clarity. But I think I'm very clear that we've been sent away to work with the groups and look for a solution within the budget of $60,000.
Right. Okay, so there we are, Councillor Mallett. The staff will report back on what is doable for $60,000 or within that budget. Okay, are there any more questions on this? Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Could I just seek some clarity from the proposer and seconder of the motion, just to get some clarity around the wording? I would prefer to have that a capital budget of $60,000, comma, and an annual operating budget of $5,000 from year one be included in, because as it reads there, I could read that it's actually an annual budget of $60,000 and $5,000 per year. So I just wonder if we just get some clarity around that. $60,000 is the one-up capital cost, and the $5,000 is the annual operating costs of the one or two facilities.
Yeah.
But I asked
getting the nods from them that they are happy with that inclusion.
Thank you. Put a comma in after 60,000. Yeah.
Okay, so if there's no other questions,
I have a question.
we're now going to, oh, yes, Councillor King?
When I was younger...
How long is this going to take? Oh, sorry, that might offend someone. Apologies.
Scattered around our cities, we had drinking fountains. I don't see very many anymore. Is there a reason why we haven't got drinking fountains in and I'm just trying to get my head around
So
why we don't have them anymore, and this is in a way like a water fountain on a bigger domestic scale. Can you see any conflict associated with that?
No, not at this point. I don't know the reason why Hamilton may, if that's your reference to Hamilton, why they may have had them and they're not here now. I don't know the answer to that, but clearly the facilities that you find in schools, drinking water fountains in schools. I don't think there's any technical reason why we can't have them. Clearly, we've got a number of councils putting them in around the country. So I think it's just a choice issue, and whether there'd be a demand for use of facilities like this. That's one thing that's unknown for us, is the demand that we would have on this facility. So we'll try and gauge that as part of our consultation with the groups in designing the facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Councillor Young, you're happy now with that? Moved and seconded, so I'll go to you to speak to it.
Thank you, Your Worship. Now, I believe Hamilton was the first to hold a 4-day tribunal hearing about fluoridation, and then subsequently there's a referendum in October 2013. And out of the result of the referendum, 24,635 people voted for to have fluoride, and 11,768 voted against. So to me, I'm looking at it's about 1/3 to 2/3. That's about the voting from the referendum. Now, today, this motion is not about any further debate about fluoridation or not, because I think that already set in concrete. And also, I noticed during the fluoride debate, we have a huge media coverage from the TV and other newspapers. And I believe at that time, Hamilton was leading about the whole country about debates on fluoridation. But since then, it seems we are falling way behind a lot of other major cities. Because as the general manager highlighted, there are other cities in New Zealand. They are starting to provide some drinking water station with non-fluoridated water. And with Hamilton, we are way behind the others. And there are a lot of concerns from the people, especially those who voted against fluoridation, and like health reasons, allergies, and all different worries or doubts about fluoride. And this motion actually is to give them a choice. People can go out and get free water from the water station to have some non-fluoridated water. And I don't believe, like Councillor mentioned about there might be a big tanker or try to fill up the tank, or maybe at most people will bring a 20-liter bucket. They might be standing there for 5 minutes to fill up the water bottle. And also I believe the design of the water station will set up some limitation and what sort of people will come and get water. And I don't believe there will be a long queue in the water station. And what this motion is all about is to give a choice to those people who voted against fluoride. And there are other cities doing that already, like Hastings. They just did it in November last year. And I noticed Palmerston North just started last month. So that means other cities, they are providing this non-fluoridated water source. And I do believe Hamilton will need to do it as well. And to have that, $60,000 is set aside. And I think the motion is quite clear. If the report comes back from staff saying that it's over that, I think we are not going to do it. But if it's within that 60,000, I believe we have to do one, at least. We need to satisfy 1/3 of the population here. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Mallett?
Yeah, I'm close to supporting this. I can see exactly where Philip's coming from, and there is a huge percentage of our population who had valid concerns regarding fluoridisation of water and certainly the freedom of choice issue. Just the thing about you don't think there'll be big tankers, I think it's a great opportunity. I wasn't saying it was a bad thing. I absolutely think it'd be great if someone went out, took a big tanker and then supplied Rototuna. And then supply, I mean, it's totally logical and you'd rather have that than having, well, that's how business works, you know.
Not worth the wait.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not concerned that there's a big, that some, if this goes through, that someone, entrepreneurial guy says, oh, look, I'll do the tanker run for Rototuna and you guys can pay me for the transport of the water's for free. So it doesn't concern me, that side of things. I just think that I was concerned before, and I still am concerned, that the $60,000 and the $5,000 per annum operating budget, I'm just concerned that whether or not the staff can provide it for that cost, you know, on the with the report. But I look forward to seeing what comes back.
Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Tooman.
Yes, Your Worship, I wish to speak against the motion. When you consider the referendum which was held prior to the last election, the majority of the citizens of this community decided that they wanted fluoride in their water. I take my advice from the District Health Board and those persons who really know something about the health of our community, and all the health professionals which I've spoken to have recommended that it stay within the water supply of the city. I wonder how often we're going to actually visit this. We made a decision last time, and every time we get an email from Fluoride Free or whoever, we all get a bit nervous. Let's make a decision, let's move on and stop this relitigation by all these groups within our community.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Forsyth.
I'd like to support Councillor Young, and especially the stance that he's taking on freedom of choice. And really that's the focus of my reasoning for supporting the motion. This could be any other matter. It doesn't necessarily have to be fluoride, but the focus for me is freedom of choice. And the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights state that all peoples are entitled to certain freedoms, basic freedoms and rights, whether it's freedom of speech, freedom of education, freedom of sexual orientation, freedom and right of equal pay, or freedom of choice. I note that Councillor Mallett's concerns around a huge rush, for the potential rush for the use of water, in my mind is a good thing. And actually, if we end up having queues and queues and queues of people taking tanks and tanks and tanks of unfluoridated water, then it would suggest to me that, well, actually, we might have got half of our decision right and we might have got half of our decision wrong. If there's that much of a demand for unfluoridated water, then clearly this is just the start of meeting that need, and we could be finding ourselves in the position where we could be coming back to the table and re-litigating, as Councillor Tooman pointed out, re-litigating the whole issue. If it's that popular, then we might be having to look at the bigger issue in the end anyway. So, as I said, my grounds for supporting this is around freedom of choice.
Okay, no other speakers? Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah. Thanks, Your Worship. Look, I am going to support the motion, and one of the key reasons for that is the fact that a report will come back to Council, and as I understand it from Councillor Young's explanation, that if that report does actually show that it is not viable and that the cost is far greater than $60,000, that will then be a matter for Council to make a decision at the time. So because this doesn't force this expenditure on Council, I'm happy to support that.
All right, we're now going to the board to vote on this motion.
You got to vote.
Okay, thank you. Right, councillors, we're now moving on to attachment 2 funding requests, which is page 15. And the first item on that is the Hamilton Waikato tourism submission, and the staff recommendation is that we do meet that request for a funding of an additional 195,000. So who is speaking to this item?
Your Worship, I am. The General Manager, Events and Economic Development, unfortunately is not here today. So very briefly, the other councils, the other 6 funding partner councils have all indicated their support for the increased funding for the RTO, obviously noting that they have to go through their final budget process at the end of the month, but all of them have indicated their approval. So we are the last council to consider the matter. Council did pass a resolution back in February that the item remain unfunded and that the Mayoral Forum be asked to consider a regional approach to acceptable level of funding to increase the Hamilton and Waikato tourism. I know there have been discussions at the Mayoral Forum, and obviously we now know the other councils have approved their funding. We are the last funder to consider the matter. It is the recommendation of staff that council do increase their funding in line with the report previously provided to council.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mallett, question?
Yes, please. Blair, do you know what we currently spend per year? So this would be an increase from 195,000 from what?
390,000 is our current grant. So
we're close to 600,000 when we per annum.
We would be 585,000 if this was increased. So it's a 50% increase across the board for each council.
Okay. Councillor Pascoe?
Yes, in the original submission that we received from Tourism Waikato, in order of this growth that they were developing for their business, they included in there a possible grant from Waikato Regional Council. My understanding is that grant, they were not successful in getting that. It was a brand new grant because previously the Regional Council haven't been involved. Will that affect in any way their proposal to, because as I understand it, this significant increase in the grant is to allow them to move to the next level of operation within their business structure. Will that decline from Waikato Regional Council affect in any way their ability to move up that next step?
So you are correct, the Regional Council has declined the grant request. My understanding from the General Manager is that the main drive of their increased program was the 7 councils, the core funder councils. So if our council also improves our increase, that will provide them with the funds to do the majority of the work that they're seeking to do. The Regional Council was obviously going to add them some additional further monies, but it's not critical for the additional work that they're requiring.
Thank you.
Right. Can I just check CFO, just on the money side of this, because this will be an operating expense?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So this wasn't initially factored into the budget?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Right, so what does that do? And while you're setting up, Councillor Gallagher, did you have a question?
Oh, I have. When you're taking the debate, I'll
yes, okay.
So, Your Worship, the provision of $195,000 would leave us in 2020 at a debt-to-revenue ratio of 200%, with debt at that year at $454,998,000, peak debt in 2024.
So I suppose, sorry to interrupt CFO, but I guess the question is what impact does this have rather than, does it move the dial of any of these things?
Yes, it does, Your Worship.
Which ones?
It moves the balancing the books surplus down to $237,000.
In the first year?
In the first year. $841,000 in the first year. We continue to make balancing the books surplus across all 10 years. And as I was stating, the debt figures change across the 10 years, with peak debt reaching $495 million, and then dropping back to 172% by the end of the 10 years. The key debt figure of reaching the debt target of 200% in 2020 is still achieved.
Right, so it doesn't change that, it doesn't change the balancing the books, Can I just ask also, have you factored in now to that, given the decision just made of $60,000?
Yes, Your Worship, that is included.
Included in that, right. Okay, so that's clear for everyone? Doesn't change the measures? No. Okay. All right, any other questions on this topic? Right, yes, Councillor King?
Can I ask Blair to read out what motion or what we passed last time, or what went forward to the mayoral?
So the resolution that Council passed on the 4th of February, I'll read the wording, that the increase to the regional tourism funding remain unfunded at present, and that the mayoral forum, including the regional council, be asked to consider a regional approach to an acceptable level of funding increase for Hamilton and Waikato tourism.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So that was including regional council?
Yes, it was.
And so regional council didn't come through?
Correct. So regional council have declined, but the other 6 councils, apart from Hamilton City, have approved their funding. So the regional approach, excluding the regional council, they have come on board with their funding. We remain the only council to make a decision.
Thank you.
All right. Do I have a motion for this?
Yes, I'll move that council fund the recommendation that the council fund the $195,000 increase per annum.
So that would be 12B3.
Sorry,
Your Worship.
I'll go back to that.
Yep, no, that's fine.
I'll go back to that instead of reading it off here.
12B3.
Okay, and that's seconded by the Deputy Mayor. The councillors, the motion is as set out on page 6, paragraph 12B3. So is it still subject to Councillor Pascoe final confirmation of the funding from the other councils?
Yes, it is.
Right.
And I guess that was our original, but my understanding is that the other councils have also agreed, subject to all of the other councils in the group agreeing to the increase.
Yes, I think it's
it's all conditional.
It's a technical point, but all of us have got to get to the 30th of June, and I think it just provides that final layer of assurance.
Right, okay. And that's seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Okay, so do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I'll speak to that. And again, I'll just re-emphasise that it is conditional on the other councils coming to the party, which my understanding is that they have. Obviously, I support the motion. I've had personally quite a lot of dealings lately with the with the tourism group through my involvement as City Sporting Ambassador. I have to say that what I've observed of the organisation is that it's a well-oiled and well-organised group. The people who work there are very visible, and I think we're getting a return on that grant. Our return on that grant is significantly more satisfactory than what it would be if we were endeavouring to try and run a tourism entity within council. And I think the fact that it also is a collaboration with other councils in the area is also an important tick in terms of our collaboration with our other TLAs.
Okay, thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Gallagher?
Yes, I, on balance, will vote for this. I find a situation where the Hamilton and Waikato tourism literally had to go around cap in hand to all the councils, compared with, say, if you're in Dunedin, I think Hawke's Bay or Auckland, an example of tortuous process. I also, as people would be well aware, would prefer that we recognise the mayoral forum for the major instrument of regional leadership and governance that it is. And that debate would have been held in open session by the mayoral forum, and the minutes would be freely available. Having said that, let me publicly acknowledge what I believe to be the very good leadership that our own mayor is providing to those group of mayors in this and other areas. But I do think this whole scenario where the poor old Hamilton and Waikato tourism bodies have to go around the region as against an open, transparent, one-stop shop. And this highlights again issues around regional funding of regional facilities, surf life saving, etc., etc. We just really have to do this kind of regional funding in a more effective, efficient way, in my view. And the notion that, of course, if one council falls over, then the whole, sort of like a deck of cards, it all falls over. And frankly, the super city of Auckland and other regions must be feeling quite smug in terms of the torturous processes that we go through. Having said that, I agree with Councillor Pascoe. I think there's very clear evidence that this organisation, under some very excellent leadership, is, in my view, doing a very, very good job. I would like in future for them to be able to sort of have a much better guarantee of funding, you know, moving forward in terms of process, but I think this will be of significant assistance. I also acknowledge that compared with other regions, as I would understand it, this body would be getting a lot less than, say, if we were in Dunedin, Auckland, etc., etc. But I will be, on balance, supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mallett.
Yeah. Thank you. I speak against it. I don't see why we pick out one particular industry for public subsidy and then expect the ratepayers of the region, and particularly the ratepayers of Hamilton, to support it. I don't know of any plumbers, any panel beaters, any accountants, any lawyers who are being supported and subsidised by the ratepayers, so I don't know why the tourism operators should be. I just have one question. I wonder if Blair could answer, or you won't know now, but can you provide the salaries for the tourism, Waikato tourism?
I'm not
to what extent is this salaries, and to what extent is it spent on generating, and I appreciate salaries is also spent generating, but this is a public entity, so I assume just like our salaries are publicly available, these would be?
Look, I'm not privy to the information on salaries. Obviously, the airport, it's a subsidiary of the airport company, so it may well disclose banding ranges of staff. My understanding is the vast majority of this money is for programs, additional tourism-related programs.
Okay, can you get me the figures then?
No, I can't.
But then later on, can you get me?
Yeah. Just
Thank
to
you.
assist, the financials are publicly available and they come through the airport, so it's public information, so it should be easy to have. In fact, I think we received.
Yeah, it'll be easy.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we certainly receive the airport accounts, and your subcommittee receives those.
All right. Any other speakers for or against? Yes, Councillor King.
I believe this is a regional matter. Well, this is a regional matter. Waikato Regional Council cover the area we're talking about largely. Waikato Regional Council declined to put in their share of money, and that was part of what we asked them to do when we asked to go back to all councils. Waikato Regional Council are proposing setting up a fund to cover regional matters, to subsidise and put money into this and other business ventures. I believe this is their area, and with them not even being prepared to put up a percentage towards it, let alone picking up the whole thing, and that this would cover off the issues that Councillor Gallagher was referring to, of trying to organise everybody into a group to do this. And I believe Waikato Regional Council have let the team down on this one. So I'll be voting against this increase.
Right, any other speakers for or against? Councillor Forsyth.
Yeah, just quickly. Look, this is how I see it working. Tourism is promoted. More people want to come and stay in Hamilton and in the Waikato. And I know two of the really biggest, well actually three of the biggest draw cards for Hamilton in the area are Hamilton Gardens, of course, our world famous Hamilton Gardens, Waitomo Caves, and Hobbiton at Matamata. So when you've got people, a regional body promoting those assets for our city and our region, and then you get more people coming to stay here and inject money into our economy by staying at hotels and motels, by coming to the city and eating and drinking and maybe spending a bit of money as well. I think in the long run that does trickle down to support people like plumbers and builders and all sorts of other service industry providers, because when motels and hotels have full bed nights, at some point in time they've got to be either expanded or maintained and renewed. So that's the way I see tourism benefiting our economy, and I think in a bigger picture as well. I mean, we are a dairy economy too, and dairy prices fluctuate yearly, and we're going through another downturn now. So I think that the broader we can spread our economic advantage, then the better. If we can increase our tourism and encourage tourism, then that's, in the long run, in the bigger picture, got to be a better thing for our community. Full stop.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to write a reply, Councillor Payne?
Yes, I would, thank you. Just very, very briefly, I do agree with Councillor King that that the Regional Council do have an involvement in this, and it is disappointing that they did not come to the party. But remember, they have not previously been a funder of Waikato tourism, so it was a new opportunity for the Regional Council to become involved, and let's hope that they do use their new fund or other rates that they collect off us to do that. Just to respond quickly to Councillor Gallagher's concerns about the tortuous approach that that regional tourism had, I think that was partially expected because they were in this instance looking for a 50% increase in the annual grant from all of the councils. So it wasn't just a normal inflation adjusted increase, it was a significant 50% increase so that they could put their business model to a new level. So I think there was an expectation from Kiri and her team that this would that it would be a tortuous approach to get the funding across the line.
Okay, thank you. Right, we're going to the board to vote.
Madam Chair, Councillor McPherson's vote has been used, so I'll ask if I reset that, we could ask the council to re-vote.
Right.
Andrew's sitting.
Re-voting.
It's nice to see Max still with us.
Oops. What are we doing?
We're voting.
It's carried 8 votes for, 3 against.
Thank you. The next item on page 15 is the Tiara River Ride request. So I understand, Chris, is this sort of your area? It constitutes cycling. So the way I read the staff summary of this submission, and I do also commend the group because they came to the engagement sessions several times, a number of their members, and I thought they presented very well. You are not recommending any changes or adjustments because this can be covered off by that discretionary transport fund, and we did make some decisions yesterday on that particular fund in terms of allocation to cycling. So have I summed that up?
Correct, Your Worship. The decision yesterday is consistent.
Right, is there any discussion on this point then, councillors? No other changes? All right, thank you. That was short. Creative Waikato. They have made a couple of requests. So, councillors, does anyone wish to call any matter on that? I mean, I think the staff recommendations in response to those requests are very good and appropriate. No? Okay, we're moving on then to U Leisure, which is a request for some funding for their pool.
Your Worship, we've just got one additional piece of information to add to that.
Right, thank you.
That the attachment 2 did not include Hamilton Boys High School request, which is consistent with that of U Leisure, largely consistent. So just a point for the record, Boys High did request through the partner pool grant, so apologies for that omission.
So, Your Worship, just so that councillors are clear, just some background information.
Yeah.
And it has been given to councillors before, but just so you recall, we've had about $70,000 in the partner pool's funding for quite a few years. And the annual plan last year, that was increased to $90,000 to help with the pressure on our aquatic facilities. So we currently have Fairfield College, Te Rapa Primary School, the U Leisure pool, which is University of Waikato, and Hillcrest Normal School pools, which we pay $2.90 a head for admission during the summer period, a 6 month summer.
Is that $2.90?
$2.90, but that's capped at a certain level, like $15,000 or $25,000, and that's it's been the cap has been averaged on what they've achieved over the previous 5 years.
Right.
So council last year voted to give us a bit of extra money and asked us to review the partner pools program. So Matt and Dee have been working through that. There's some complexity with some of these school pools with Fairfield College with operations of that. They have been operating themselves. They're looking at getting a swim club, etc., etc. And part of our requirements is that they have qualified lifeguards. So we're still working through that process. We're working with each of those schools around the allocation for the next summer period. U Leisure pool, as it alludes to in the report, is that it's quite an old pool, and they've got some. Will have some capital upgrade issues to deal with. So they've got to work through that. It's also a little bit challenging. It's quite a narrow pool if people have been there. It's not particularly wide for lane swimming and all that sort of stuff. So, but it does provide, you know, a good service in that part of the city. So we're suggesting that we work through this with our current providers, and as Blair said, there's also the submission from Hamilton Boys, and I mentioned yesterday that I met with them over the last couple of weeks, and just getting some clarity from them about what they can provide the community. We're not totally clear on that yet. So my recommendation would be, Your Worship, is that their funding stays the same as the recommendation here, and that also with Hamilton Boys High School, we consider that as part of our review for this next summer period, and then we bring that back to the Finance Committee.
So just thanks for that update, that's been really helpful. Just of the group there, which school is in ascending order? Which school is the top and which is the bottom in terms of accessing the funding, or do they all pretty much meet the cap?
Well, it varies from year to year.
Right.
So some of them don't uplift all the money because they haven't got the numbers. So they've got to provide us numbers, and there's a whole bunch of honesty and auditing involved in that. And
Right.
they've all been pretty good to deal with, to be honest. So if I can just give you a bit of a rundown, like Te Rapa sort of get about $10,000. The uni's been about between 20 and 30, up to their cap at 30. Fairfield College about 10, and Hillcrest 10. So they're all have previously asked us for more money. Sure, they want more, but we're saying, you know, we've got to look at the value for the ratepayer, and the challenge they have is that, you know, costs do go up. It's not core business for schools, and they've got their whole challenges around the curriculum and that sort of thing, and what teachers do and people after school do and that sort of thing. Generally, they try and partner with a swim club, which makes it a bit easier for them to get qualified lifeguards and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So the uni probably has been getting, you know, a larger amount than some of the other pools, but also obviously it gets larger numbers too, just with its location.
Okay, so now with the Boys High School wanting to enter into that and doing major upgrade, what you're saying is give us time to work it through and re-look at it.
Yep.
I also understand that Fairfield is interested in, you know, making changes and focusing a lot more on more community involvement.
Yes. Yeah, so they're looking at that. They've also got some, you know, asset issues as well going forward, like any pool that's 40 or 50 years old. But they have got good facilities there, and, you know, good security and fencing and that sort of thing. So So we're working that through. So we're saying the amount of money we've got at the moment is adequate, and it would be prudent that we just work through with the current providers and Hamilton Boys on the allocation of that $90,000 that we have in the budget for that.
And with the certainty over the municipal pool decision and this, and also, I think, you know, we've got some other pool into the future stuff in our budget. That probably gives you a bit more of a bookend on what you've got to deal with.
It does, and with the decision yesterday, then we probably have to look at now what would our preference be around the location of the partner pools to provide swimming in different geographic locations of the city.
Okay, are there any further questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Yes, a question, Your Worship, to the General Manager. So at the moment we have $90,000 for the partner pools.
Yes.
And at the moment we have an intention from Boys High School. I understand the figure is 20 or 25,000. We have a request here for 5,000 increase for the university pool, and there's a possibility of Fairfield coming on board. Does that mean that you would then divide all of that up from the 90,000, and so the amounts given to other schools would be adjusted, or do you think you would end up rejecting one of those schools because the budget is 90 and that's it?
We'll have to work through that. Currently we have just under $70,000 allocated, so there is some wriggle room of $20,000 to either accommodate Hamilton Boys or to go through a process that you're talking about. Now, some of them, like Fairfield, it will depend on whether or not they can meet our criteria around having qualified lifeguards and things like that. We don't think it's prudent that council actually funds any public swimming where there could be safety issues or anything like that. So we need to work through that process. So you're right, but we're not aiming for there to be any losers in this. We're looking at getting the best bang for buck to the ratepayer and potentially providing another pool, partner pool where the community can use it during the summer period.
So the fact that we yesterday rejected the municipal pool, is that likely to put pressure then on the partner pools? Because we still haven't had the debate about bringing forward the northeast pool. I know that's separate from this question, but I am concerned that the 90 is not enough to deal with your future likely applications. So you're squeezing everyone into the 90 pool. So is it adequate, or is there a case for another 20? Pick a number. Is there a case for more money in your view?
I would say it's prudent to stay within the 90 at the moment until we work through those discussions with those schools. But as I mentioned yesterday, and we've discussed, you know, for the last 18 months in the regional sports facilities plan, there is pressure on all pools within Hamilton. There is a lack of swimming space and going forward. So that's a fact, and we've shown that with all the empirical information that's come through. Yes, it'd be nice to have some more money, but my advice at the moment would be stick within the $90,000. There might be a discussion later on around the Rotuna pool and the 4.8 million and that sort of thing. I would say just leave it at the moment, let us work through those discussions and then revisit that during the annual plan later in the year.
So you're just saying that if there is a case put up by Boys High, for example, or Fairfield, that could be handled in the annual plan process, that we're not cutting them off for another long period?
No.
So when do you think that you'll be ready to come to us with that report?
Probably the next couple of months. Yeah. Okay. So because the partner pools generally operate from Labour weekend to Easter, so we need to get it sorted, you know, before that period. So it'd be July, August.
Right.
The
okay.
latest.
Thank you. So unless there's anything else on that matter, okay, we move on. Thank you, Lance, to Rivoli Theatre. This is a request to gift the land. So Blair, are you able to just give us a bit of an update? Because I mean, this is, to be frank, this is a little bit deja vu.
Yes, it is.
Because we've been through all this before.
With the leave of the Council, I have just sought if Nick Wells is in the building to come down to
Right.
provide any further information. So possibly if we
All right,
can
so we'll just wait till
park
he's
that
here,
one and just take
and
it.
then we'll come back to it when he's here. The Runanga, so this was, that was a very good meeting I think we had with them at Wintec.
That's correct.
Slice of the pie.
Yeah, so this was about how the marae was treated, wasn't it, and whether it
Correct. So
could be regarded as a community facility.
I recall Councillor Leary had a question along the veins of this one yesterday, and this was separate to their funding they receive in terms of the contracted service. This was, I guess, new information they raised in terms of council considering urban marae as sort of community facilities or community house type complexes, and potentially that we may allocate some money towards those facilities for them to operate in that manner. So quite separate from the contract that they have with us in terms of policy advice. And that was the nature of the request. They weren't specific as to the quantum of money, and I think, to be fair, it was probably certainly the first time that I've heard that submission or that type of request come through for the urban marae facilities.
Right.
And the reference was given to the state of some of the buildings,
That's right.
the programs they operate, etc.
So, are there any questions on that one? No? Okay, and that'll make its way through that review of our community facilities as well, so that's good. All right, the next item is living wage. The recommendation here by the staff, no further action required. Any questions? Yes, Councillor Gallagher?
To the Chief Executive, if the majority of councillors were minded to want to pursue this with you for future years, or to look at how that could look, what would be the appropriate resolution? Because I know that there's a balance between you as the Chief Executive managing this organisation, but if governance was minded that we had an aspiration to look at all of our people being on a living wage, how might that be done without telling you how to manage on a day-to-day basis?
I think we've already had the discussion through a number of briefings about the merits or otherwise in terms of the living wage, and I think that was the forum for council to consider whether or not they believed the living wage was appropriate for Hamilton City Council. We still maintain that the current mechanism for employing staff is robust and ensures fairness and equity. So I think we've had that discussion. It's really, if the council decides to adopt it, then it's a question for implementation at that point.
So just remind me, we have debated and made a decision. We actually have a council resolution not to adopt a living wage, don't we? I'm just trying to remember.
No, Your Worship, the recommendation was put on the 9th of December, but there was no resolution to that.
No, before that, at the marae.
Yes, on the 4th of July 2013, a resolution was made.
And that resolution was... Sorry, I'm just trying to remember, but I think it was actually to answer the question whether we adopt one or not. We just check that, so because that is the current position and that's been unchanged. Is that right? Well, on the 5th of December, did we resolve not to?
No, there was no resolution on the 5th of
That's
December,
right.
so that resolution from the 4th of July still stands, Your Worship.
All right, thank you. Right, so is there any further discussion?
I'll just put a motion and we'll test it.
So what
the
is your
Chief
motion?
Executive be requested to report further to councillors how a living wage might be implemented in future years.
To that point, we have provided that information previously, Councillor Gallagher. We have talked about a number of the impacts, both of implementing a living wage from a cost point of view. There's significant increased costs. From a relativity point of view, the impact on the relativity of staff. We've also provided information to council previously on the impact from a contractor and a subcontractor point of view if we were to implement that policy. So that recommendation has already been satisfied in previous meetings.
Just checking, I'm come to you, Councillor Mitt, but Councillor Gallagher, I'm just checking our December meeting.
Yeah.
Because we were given, need guidance from the General Manager
So,
here,
Your
but I
Worship, it was
thought
actually
we had a full report there answering very much exactly what you've just raised. So
It was considered on the 4th of February was when the actual item was discussed, but the information was included in the December information packet. Was
That's right.
Item 10 of the unfunded proposals.
Item 10?
Of the unfunded proposals was the one pertaining to living wage.
Right.
And there was a minute note made on the 4th of February that the General Manager Organisational Development presented the item regarding the recommending that the Council does not adopt the living wage. And that was the minute note.
Okay.
Right. So I guess, Councillor Gallo, in response to your question, we've actually had all that information formally received. Right, so that answers that. Councillor Mallett, did you have a question?
No, it's been addressed, thank you.
Right. Any other matters in relation to this one? No? Is Nicholas here?
We can't track him down at the moment, Your Worship.
All right, so what we might do, Councillor, while we're still waiting, is we've been given some Ministry of Justice information this morning. Someone's got to get Calvin now, I guess. I'm just trying to be practical here. Just remind me,
General Manager Brian Crowe.
Oh, right. So yesterday, Jude, could you just remind us what we resolved yesterday? And this is the additional information requested. So is there anything further you wanted to add to this, Brian?
No, I was just checking, Your Worship, is the one page has been distributed to everybody?
Yes, I was just here.
Has everyone had a chance to have a read of it?
No, not really.
Right, so, all right, so what we might do is we might take a break for morning tea now, and that'll give people a chance to have a read. So we'll take 15 minutes for morning tea, and we'll convene back at 11:15. Okay, thanks.